All right, hello everyone, my name is Elijah Simmons. Today I'm going to introduce you to Zero. Zero is one of the latest web application tools that is designed to completely eliminate your wait time, all those API calls, and a whole bunch of other nonsense that we have to deal with in our tech applications today. So what is Zero? I'm going to go through a brief talk about what it is, and then we're going to dive right into the code, create a Reactive app with it, and start fetching data by the end of this video. So to start with, Zero is in alpha. So what that means is that they have not finished it at all. It still has bugs. I've still been able to break it with a million rows. You know, they still need that kind of support. But the way it works is it's going to spin up a cache server. They're going to call it the Zero Cache Server, and you'll see this later. And what this is going to do is it's going to operate between your database and between your client. And right now they support Postgres database, so we're going to be using that today. So install that if you haven't already. And the way it interacts between them is like I've shown in this picture here. So they call it an incremental view maintenance. What they do is they compile your queries, which are written in zQuil. It's completely intuitive. It's just like SQL, except more like Prisma in that it's an ORM. You'll see that in a second. But they compile your query as a function. That change that happens on the client side, or maybe it happens somewhere else on somebody else's device and comes through the WebSocket, is then going to get passed through this function. And it's going to have that identifier. So let's say I have now changed my status to now that I'm active. That's going to say, hey, this row was updated with my information. And then it's going to pass that change into that function. And that's going to tell the database, oh, hey, this update's on its way. But you have all of your data from your database in a local cache storage, or at least a subset of it if you have a large data set. So that gets updated immediately. With instant access to the data, there's no more waiting for loading signs. Everything is instantaneous, and we're going to show off how reactive and powerful this tool is by creating one of the coolest apps ever, a chess game app for online players. I don't know if you play chess, but if you play chess on any website, you know that there is lag. We're here to eliminate that, so let's get started. So I'm going to ask that you would open, if you can, a GitHub repository. If not, just a blank file. We're going to start by creating our Vite app. So I'm going to move back a directory just so I don't have to deal with the mess of moving things out of the file. And then we're going to run the command npm create Vite at latest. What are we going to name it? We'll name it what we had before, Zero Sync Chess. Feel free to name it whatever you want, although this will be available as well in the description. So if you need to see the code at any time, go ahead and copy that link. And then we're going to say template react app ts. Okay? This is going to give us a couple different prompts. I'm sorry, you probably can't see that. Let me bring it up here. I'm going to ignore the files. Continue. This is going to be package.json. This is your package. We're going to do React, TypeScript, and we're done. Okay, I can move that back down. So now I'm going to move back to my folder, and we're going to start by installing the Zero Sync. So npm install at Rocky Corp, that is their corporation. I think it's an LLC, I'm not sure. That's their company, and then /0. This is going to take a little while because you're installing a lot of packages here. And while that's installing, let me tell you my vision I have for this app. This app is going to be absolutely incredible. It's going to be a better user interface for chess players. Now that that's done installing, let's get started by creating our .env file. This is an important file. This is where we're going to hold eventually things like our auth secret, but for now we're just going to hold two things. Those two things are going to be a string to connect to the Postgres database And the other is going to be, I have it right here so I don't have to type it out for you, but that's going to be the file where we have our 0 replica running. It's very important that you have both of these set up correctly, because without these, you're not going to be able to access the database for the first, and without the second, you're not going to be able to get that replica file up and running to have the wondrous effects of zero sync on your app. So this is going to be the username you created with Postgres. Make sure you have that written down. If you don't, you got to make a new one. Make sure this is your password. And then make sure this is pointing to the database you have created. I'm going to create a different database called zChess, so I'm going to change that now so I don't forget. This is all fine. That's set up for me. Feel free to make that however you want. Save that here. And now we're ready to create our schema. So generally speaking, I would create the schema first in the Postgres database, but for now, I want to get started with 0. I'm excited. So let's create it here, and we will have to make sure that we create it in Postgres before we start syncing them, because that's how 0 works. So we're going to import, not like that, schema, table, string. We're going to create our first table. Let's call it zChessUser. These are going to be our chess users. We're going to say table zChessUser. Oh yeah, and if you'd like to use something like Copilot, you see I have running here, you can try. They really suck at this stuff though. They don't understand the syntax because we're missing a lot of documentation on this. But this is one of those things I'm going to help you with. So here's the syntax. This is equal. Your table, you're going to put the name right after the table in those parentheses. And then you're going to say dot columns, define your columns. And then after that, you can put a dot and do a primary key. You can do relationships. You can do a whole bunch of other stuff. We'll get to that in other videos. For now, we're just going to make the most simple table we can. ID with a string. And let's do name with a string. And then we'll, at the end, put dot primary key so that it knows how to find and index things. So this is going to be our table. We're going to have to set this up in Postgres, so we'll do that in a minute. Let's create our schema, though. So schema, and we're going to export this because we're going to need it throughout the rest of the app. Create schema. Oh, we didn't import that yet. Create schema, tables, and then the array of the tables that you've defined. So this could get quite, not that it wouldn't any other way, but this could get quite annoying if you have a lot of tables and a lot of schemas to define, especially where you have to get every single column right or things are going to bug out. So I could see where you might want to separate these out into separate files. For now, we just have one table, so we'll leave it in one file. And we'll also export the type. I have this in my notes because I'm not about to try and get that on the fly. Yep. Generally speaking, it's a good idea to export the type. That way we can have, that's why. I forgot about that. Generally, it's a good idea to export the type so that we can have all of our data types for all of our tables and everything. So now we're going to head over to main.tsx, and here we're going to import a couple different things. We need our 0 provider, because this is React. They provide provider. We're going to need 0. That's going to be our instance of 0 that we're going to provide throughout the app. And then we're going to need that schema we just created. Okay, now we are going to create our Z object. That's going to be a new 0. And you can do a lot of things here. We'll eventually have our authentication here and everything. For now, we're just going to do what you have to. So we're going to do a user ID, anonymous. we'll do a server. This is where your zero cache server will be. So this is generally going to be, how do you do that? No, it's the other one. Local host 4848 is where it generally is. And then your schema, yes. So this is the Z that we're going to provide throughout the app. It's going to give us access to our entire database in a way. You can set permissions to not. And this is where we're going to get that instant reactive query where we don't have to worry about creating a new object, defining the interface for it, and then maintaining it in a used state. We can just call that Z through our zero provider, which we'll define right now. Is it 0 equals Z? I think so. Might have to double check myself on that in a second. Oh, yep. So just like that, we provide the Z. And you can see here, if I hover over it, I already can see my table, zChessUser, with a column ID and name of string type. Perfect. I don't have to define anything more. I'm ready to start getting the data from it. So the first thing we're going to have to do to get this data is to get the Postgres table set up. You should have a server set up. You should have your username, your password. If not, go ahead and do that. But without further ado, I already have it made. I'll just delete it so we can do it again and show you how it works. So we'll go in here. We'll create a database. We will call this zChess because it's going to be chess. And we don't need to add anything else, so save that. Now from here, we're going to open the query tool. Go to Postgres. This is our server. Make sure it's the same server. Make sure you pick the database you just made, zChess. Make sure you enter your password correctly. And from here, if you can get to the query and you're connected to the correct database that you just made, and oh, we'll get to that, but I would create a table if it exists. Let's name it zChessUser. ID text, primary key. What do we have? Name, text. That can be your query. I would do your name, not mine. So we're going to create the table. It's going to be the identical schema to the one we defined in Z, and that's going to get really confusing. If you do complicated tables, don't worry, I'll teach you how to do that too. Then we're going to insert the values, and now we're going to go back and make sure we have it synced. Right. So let's go back. We've got our stuff here. Let's go to app. Let's get rid of all this stuff. We don't want it. We don't want to use state. And let's import use 0. That is the hook that 0 provides with their React to get that C that is in our provider. So if we say C equals U0, this is that instance we created at the very beginning. And if we want to get our zChess users, we say, now what Copilot thinks, we say z.query dot zChessUser. Use query z.query. You have to import that. That's also the hook they provide to use queries. And from here, we'll just make a div, make a p element. Then we'll just say, we'll just JSON stringify our user. See if this will show up. So there are two commands you should be aware of. The one you should obviously be aware of, npm.dev to run our local host. Here we'll see the the blank screen with our ID and name. Now, supposing that you run into a permissions error. I know I didn't now, it's because I solved it earlier. Supposing you ran into a permissions error, I'm going to put a couple different commands down below you have to do. And that will be a separate video sometime when we actually start getting chess being played on here. But I appreciate you watching. Continue to follow me as I create this app, and we will continue to get more in depth each video. So thank you for watching.